We are rested, we are relaxed, and we are fired up and ready to go. Now, let me get to some of the nonsense that's around today, which sadly is only getting crazier, but believe me, we will try to hold the crazy at bay, baby. We'll try to hold it up for the next 60 minutes or so we can just sit in a little bit of an island of some common sense here. Now, as you know, there are many people who believe climate change, first, second, third, 58th most important thing, that sacrifices must be made, that lives must be changed. And as we know, those that are willing to take to the streets to show us that they are so more morally superior than us, despite the fact that the texture that was used or the paint that was used to write the sign or the plastic of the sign or the shoes that they were marching on or the mobile phones of which they, whatever, doesn't matter. Well, got to change, right? Now, you and I both know that Australia, 1% of the world's problem, and if the climate clock, i.e. all of the different countries around the world and the percentage of which it comes to their contribution when it comes to pollution, about quarter past is China, then the third world will take you to about 25 past. You want to throw in the United States, okay, we're now talking about 25 to. Then you want to get to India, Russia, about 45 of the 60 minutes of the climate clock are people that essentially aren't bound by the rules of net zero. And yes, we'll have a discussion about net zero a little bit later in the program when Matt Canavan joins us as always on a Monday. But the point I'm about to make is not about net zero. It's about the things that we must give up. We must sacrifice to the higher power to make sure that we can do our bit to cut 1% of the world's problems while China can, of course, replace the entire Australian pollution problem in just 16 days. Notice they never push back on that number. It's just must do. And there are lots of ways that governments are trying to, do their bit to change the weather. It, of course, is that we should move from petrol cars to electric cars. Now, I don't have a problem. If you want to go and drive an electric car, good luck to you. Will I end up driving one day? Sure, right? My point is I'm kind of happy with what we've got. I'm an old school rev head. I get it, right? But in fact, in places like the ACT, they want to take away the choice. In fact, from 2035, not one new car sold in that entire principality will be anything but an electric vehicle. Now, I do think that you will be able to leave the Australian Capital Territory to go to places as far-flung as Queanbeyan or Yass or Goulburn or Bateman's Bay, and you will be able to buy a petrol vehicle. But you get the point. We must change what we drive. And then, of course, it's what we eat. It first started in New Zealand, then has been taken into Europe, that the methane that is released by cows, well, you don't get rid of the cow. Let's tax the gas, crudely referred to because where the methane comes out often can be referred to as a fluff. Maybe even a harsher word if we throw a T in, but I wouldn't dare do that. It's my first show back in a couple of weeks in the man cave. But a flatulence tax. First New Zealand, then into Denmark, because we've got to change the way things go. Well, today, taxpayer media have finally found the big killer, the big danger, the thing that we must do to save lives here at home and change the climate globally. And it is the fireplace at your joint. Yes, I'm talking to you right now. If you are currently warming in an Australian winter with wood, either behind the glass, in the heater, or in a beautiful fireplace where you can hear the crackle, well, guess what, my friends? You are part of the problem. And according to the data of which the ABC decided to focus on today, you may well be a killer of your fellow Australians. Let me read from the holy texts from the source, that being the ABC. The Centre for Safe Air at the University of Tasmania estimates that long-term exposure to wood heat smoke causes 729 premature deaths every year in Australia. Now, just think about how long we've been burning wood. We've been burning wood for, 65,000 years? All the way through to today, and we've done it in different ways and different styles, but this has been the way that humans have kept themselves warm during winter. Well, now that too is a problem. 729 premature deaths every year in Australia, which is more than the deaths attributable to emissions from the national fleet of 20 million vehicles, or from energy generation or even bushfires. Put simply, the single biggest climate killer, your heater. So what have we got to do here? Well, there are the graphs that back all of this in. And again, I'm just but a lowly member of the general population. And of course, if it's published by the taxpayer-funded media and it's from an institute or anything like that, then we must take it as the gospel that is given. Well, surprise, surprise, you people in regional Australia, yet again, you are part of the climate problem. I know, I mean, who knew? Who knew? Who knew? Who would have thought that perhaps the climate change happening around the globe may have a little something to do with China, a little something to do with the third world, a little something to do with the United States? No, it's you who burn wood in regional areas. The darker the colour, the more problems there happen to be. Wood heaters are so polluting, it only takes a relatively small number of homes burning wood to expose millions of people in a city to population. You don't necessarily see or smell a thick blanket of smoke, but the fact is that increasing the background population every winter means that we can measure the effect on the health of the population. Now, as always, when it comes to these things, yes, there are plenty of examples of people who have said, I've got asthma, kid's got asthma, the idea that when I go into the backyard, it's my neighbour who's just got smoke pouring over, it's difficult. I get it, right? I have absolute sympathy and I understand that situation, right? It's difficult for renters, but for people who, of course, purchase houses, a little indicator that there may well be somebody burning a fire, could well be the chimney that has been on the roof of your neighbour for the past 5, 10 or 50 years. So perhaps if it is going to be a health concern, you just have a little look at those things before you, in the same way, some people don't like to live under power lines. You can see it with your own eyes. But what a surprise. Of course, when cars were the problem, you must change the cars forever. But don't the cars have batteries which have elements that are dug out of the ground in Africa, and the whole question about just how environmentally effective the production of those? Shh. We're taxing cows because of the amount of fluffs they put into the air. Shh. It means we don't have to do it on insert interest group that you would like to pay more tax. Well, now get ready, because someone somewhere, most likely a teal, will say that it is time to end the fireplace, the evil fireplace that they claim is responsible for. And again, if true, this one's going to, the ball will start rolling. You know it. 729 premature deaths every single year because of people burning wood, of which we have for dozens, hundreds, and thousands of years. So apparently climate change, when person, I'm PC, invented fire, the beginning of the end of the planet. Okay. Now, let us get to Prime Minister. Well, not quite the Prime Minister, because as you know, these pollies, they all love to turn up during a disaster. Oh, here I am to help. I'm feeling your pain. Cuddles, cuddles, cuddles. Reality is nobody bothers to check. And even when the media starts to make reports about how late some of the action is, everyone just looks the other way. Well, bugger the politicians. How good is this story? This is Australians helping Australians. In South Australia, of course, we were last night, always in our hearts, and so thankful to everyone who watches us there in all of the different ways that there is to watch this program each and every night or the day after. There has been a drought, a significant one. It even pulls into the western parts of Victoria. Things have been really tough. Well, congratulations to everyone involved in a hay run. This hay run has involved many, many trucks travelling thousands and thousands of kilometres. They are bringing with them the things that will keep the livestock alive, keep the farm on track. And while others would like to tax what comes out of the backside of a cow, or tell the person who lives in the farmstead that their little potbelly stove, well, that's going to end the planet, that's for another day. Right now, normal people are saying, you know what, we see you, we help you. This from the ABC.
The convoy, made up of about 3.5 kilometres of trucks and well over 100 volunteers, given a hero's welcome in Ceduna in South Australia's far west.
And this is what people do, Australians do in time of need, and where everyone steps up.
Truckies and other helpers have come from New South Wales, Victoria, SA and Western Australia.
Ceduna is, probably the first of the real welcoming committee, but there's been a few farmers out coming at the end of their road, and which is a bit emotional for us.
Congrats to everyone involved, from the people that were driving the trucks, the people that have donated, the people who have given the hay, and the people, of course, who are now the recipients of such love that comes from the rest of the country. Again, we point you in the direction of things like Farm Aid or many, many charities which take care of people in those regions. All right. Also, about the situation when it comes to droughts in South Australia. Thankfully, there's been a little bit of rain. You would have noticed that if you watched our Town program last night, that was quite, and I was happy. I was happy to see rain. And while I know Mount Gambier isn't necessarily bang in the middle of the issues when it comes to the drought, I know that the rains not too far from it are actually helping. Well, the good news from Sky News Weather is more rain to come, meaning it won't end the drought, but it takes some of the edge off for a little time.
South Australia going to keep on pushing through into the bite by the time we hit around about midday Monday, gradually making its way towards the likes of Adelaide, and it will still be hovering about there throughout Tuesday as well. Now, separately, there's another cold front forming for the southeast, so we're expecting not just wet weather from this system, but also from that separate system.
Now, you know that regardless of what income you have, most of us have to work a couple of days for the government before we work a couple of days for ourselves. Because tax rates, well, we know the government loves it, and we know that the one single biggest source of revenue to the government is you, the average taxpayer who gets paid on the 15th of the month or every couple of weeks. So I thought we should start a new regular segment where we are going to check in on how they spent your money, what they did while you were working today. And as we know, we have been told that anything but social media is old media and therefore doesn't matter anymore. So, as our new overlords take to new forms of communicating, let's have a look at what they did while you were working today. First, a Green senator from Western Australia.
The good news is there's no more plague! Huzzah! The bad news is there's no more London.
The Greens MP from Queensland.
I was speechless when I woke up to your voice. Now you tell me how you've been feeling. Let's look it out on.
Or the Teal from the beaches in Sydney.
Hey everyone, come join us, join Zali for the first day back at Parliament House. The day started off with a beautiful sunrise over Lake Ballygriffin. After that, it was off to Parliament. The day's activities started with a welcome to country in the Great Hall performed by Ngunnawal Elder Auntie Violet Sheridan, which was followed by dancing and an address from the Prime Minister, before everyone headed out to take part in the smoking ceremony. After that, it was off to the members' dining hall for lunch, and then back to the office to get to work for Warringah.
What, she doesn't even voice her own... Imagine that! Imagine being so confident that you will forever be re-elected because, everyone hates the Liberal Party, that you don't even have to voice your own ads anymore. But anyway, that's what they did while you were working today. Right now, as we speak, at about quarter past the hour on the east coast of the country, about 9 o'clock in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Canberra, we are about to see a meeting between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It is going to be taking place at a golf course in Scotland. Now, yesterday, there, of course, was a meeting between Donald Trump and the boss of the European Union. They were able to come to a new arrangement when it comes to tariffs. Those tariffs are about 15% that will be placed on not every good that comes into the United States from the European Union, but billions of dollars worth. Considered a win by the president. Of course, the people who want to immediately say, Orange Man bad, everything terrible about Orange Man, well, they say, well, guess what? Prices on all of those things from the EU are going to go up by 15%. To the consumers that are inside the United States. Now, Keir Starmer has been a left-wing leader that has been able to find a way to form a relationship, not the special relationship that, as we know, has previously existed between the United Kingdom's leadership and the United States leadership. But as we speak there, on the west coast of Scotland, beautiful part of the world. In fact, literally imagine the opposite side of the island of where Edinburgh is. That is where we are about to see the arrival of the President of the United States, who is, of course, staying at his own golf course. Now, this meeting may well have as part of it a conversation or perhaps a resolution, and you'd imagine the fact that it's home soil, the fact that they're having this, that we might end up with a trade situation. Now, it won't be the first time that Donald Trump is going to be making his way towards the United Kingdom in the next little while. In fact, he's going to be part of state visits, which will be up in the next little while. This is just cameramen getting their eye in because the president's travelling beast is obviously a little bit bigger than what that car is, but there are plenty of security vehicles which will make their way through. The second we start to see the motorcade move, and then obviously the second in this hour that we start to hear any commentary that is made between President of the United States at the beginning of his meeting with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, we will of course bring it to you straight away. Now, let's compare the pair, as they like to say. This time, let's talk about the premiers who walk amongst us. Let's compare the leadership of the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, to the carry-on that takes place in Victoria. You may well have heard of this story, at least at the start of today, that this was going to be the plan to solve the world's problems one step at a time.
Organisers want the Harbour Bridge to be the stage for a mass protest this weekend.
The Palestine Action Group applied to police to march across the Harbour Bridge this Sunday afternoon as part of a demonstration against starvation in Gaza.
Chris Minns, no, just says no. This is the joy of the New South Wales system where if you want to protest, fine, it's your right to do so. But if you want to protest in places like this, you're going to actually have to fill out a form. You have to tell people it's happening, because if you don't tell people it's happening, guess what? You're going to end up in a courtroom, and rightly so, for the disruption. You can't just close the Sydney Harbour Bridge, regardless of what the cause is, be it something as important as what's happening on the other side of the world or closing it to promote Formula One cars. You can't just do it overnight. Anyway, Chris Minns had this to say today. With a bridge is one of the most crucial pieces of infrastructure in our city, used every day by thousands of people. Unplanned disruption risks not only significant inconvenience, but real public safety concerns. We cannot allow Sydney to descend into chaos. Good. Absolutely fine by me. And you know what's also fine by me? Regardless of who wants to make the point, if you would like to walk from one side of the Sydney Harbour to the other side via the bridge, there's a couple of ways you can do it without having to walk up the middle of it. There's a pedestrian pathway, and there are some suggestions that the protest may well just end up with people in, single or double or three wide file for hours and hours walking from one side of the other on the footpath. Okay, fine. It's what it's made for. I'm not imagining too many people are going to be able to do a protest when it comes to bridge climb, but if you want to do that, fine and fair enough. I have no problem with people protesting. I have a problem when the protesting becomes disruptive, but more importantly, becomes intimidatory, which is exactly what took place in Victoria. And let's have a look at the situation there as we compare the pair between the New South Wales Premier, who the second that he knows that this stuff's going to happen says, no, not going to happen, right? Don't even bother filling out the form. Versus the Victorian government, who turned around and pretend, well, we want a system where we don't have to take any responsibility for keeping everyone safe, because we're not going to put a system in place where anyone has to give us pre-notice of major disruptions to our city, including this garbage which was taking place in Melbourne. Now, all of that was a protest because some wealthy Jewish people in Victoria have donated money to the National Gallery of Victoria. Not because there is some sort of a FU being delivered to other people on the other side of the world. No, because wealthy people who are Jewish in Melbourne have made a donation to an art gallery, and like anyone who donates money to major cultural institutions, they name little bits of it after those people. And can you believe when very obviously, again, I don't know these people from Adam, any of these people involved in the scenario, and if someone wants to tell me there's a reason for the turn up other than we can and we don't like the faith that they are, please. But what about today, the response of, in part, the government in Victoria? The Multicultural Affairs Minister, well, of course, had to turn around and say, well, you have a right to protest. Have you got a problem with some of the stuff they were saying? Oh, I couldn't possibly say. I mean, honestly, who has the whip hand here? It's a little bit like those scenarios that I've been critical of in the past when the police turn around and say, look, we can't do much about this because, there's more of them than us. Victoria's Multicultural Minister has refused to condemn anti-Israel protesters who rallied outside the National Gallery of Victoria, blocking the path of families and little kids and sending the gallery into lockdown. Here, in part, is the minister. Compare that to the New South Wales Premier and tell me which Labor Premier would you prefer to be living with?
Of course, in Victoria, people do have the right to protest peacefully, and the vast majority of people do protest peacefully. We want to make sure that people can move around the city with confidence and safely.
Don't you like the way that all of these people talk to you like you're watching Romper Room? I see Jack and Jimmy. Seriously, look, again, you see it on the social media and now you see it in the way that they present themselves at these press conferences. Oh, no, and that's because, of course, there's a new memo where people don't like masculine and aggressive politics. Well, what about regardless of race, sex, gender, or even political opinion? That the concept of intimidating people because of what they are, rather than trying to hold people account for who they are or what they have done, is something that we should all unite around as not okay. We'll discuss that and a whole lot more with, among others, Nicholas Rees, of course, the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, which, as always, is a good conversation with the other end of the country, the great National Senator, which we will get to in a moment or two's time, in Matt Canavan. Now, as we know, the Endless Victory Lap, which is going on in Canberra, well, I don't care. But they, of course, all day, every day, flood the zone. Remember how I told you about that last night? If not, go and check that video out at skynews.com.au. Well, another thing that plays out in and around social media, and remember, social media is the future, the only way everyone will ever communicate with each other. Don't you just get tired of this every now and then? What about, okay, cool, it's part of the mix. It might be the dominant, it might be whatever, right? But in between, everyone else is allowed to get their information from lots of different places, including how you are doing it right now. Be it live on the TV right now, literally 5, 6, 7 seconds past the 23rd minute of the 9 o'clock hour on the east coast of Australia, or online at skynews.com.au, or whenever you want to watch it on YouTube, right? That's the way the world works. Well, there's a little thing where you compare the way something starts and how it's going, where, of course, when it starts, it's all kind of cool, and then eventually, because it's not going well, it ends up looking like Luke Skywalker did in those terrible sequel films. Well, perfect example of how it started versus how it's going. Enter going to the doctor. Now, as you know, this was a major way that the Prime Minister was able to change the subject after going into this year behind in the polls. Now, I know that's forgotten in all of the analysis about the 2025 election, but you know the trouble that he was in. So they just changed the subject to Medicare and tried to scare everyone that apparently there was going to be an evil Liberal National Party candidate near you that was going to somehow rip a Medicare card out of your hand, despite the fact there was no evidence and it is just an outright lie. You know how many times you heard this.
Your Medicare card, your Medicare card, the Medicare card. You just need your Medicare card.
Well, that was the promise. Australians certainly fell for it and certainly endorsed it with more than 90 seats in the Parliament, a mega majority for the Prime Minister. So how's it going? Now, even though I told you during the election campaign that the promise was a promise that even doctors were telling us was not going to be fulfilled, guess what? Even the health department is now saying that it will not be fulfilled. But Jedi mind trick. Look the other way. There is nothing terrible about this government. In fact, a quarter of GP clinics, according to the health department, won't be bulk billing. So you may need something other than the Medicare card. And then, God love you, Channel 9. God love you, Channel 9. I know you don't want to upset the boat when it comes to this Prime Minister. We also know, you know, the big cuddles that were there on the 60 Minutes profile, and we know the special relationship when it comes to information being shared. Well, they buried the lead in their own story, which was supposed to read like this. Report predicts a jump in bulk billing. GP clinics nationwide, meaning more Aussies can see a doctor for free. Well, this was a little bit of spin off a report which came out of an organisation called Clean Bill. They choose to count the number of clinics that will be bulk billing. But what about the number of people who will be bulk billed? Well, the report found that clinics that don't bulk bill, remember, a quarter of them, according to the Health Department, will be unlikely to reduce their costs, which means that out-of-pocket costs may go up, as they have for the last 3 years. So, how it started? All you need is one card. How's it going? Yeah, you'll probably need something else as well, probably for FPOS, where, of course, the merchant fees will mean that you pay even more to be going to the doctor that apparently everyone will be paying for free. Another example, how it started, how it's going. This one here, Katie Gallagher, the finance minister. Now, of course, she previously many, many times had said, look, you know, we're so much better than the Libs because we hire public servants and we make sure that they're on full-time wages and we don't pay the types of money that those evil buggers do to consultants. Example?
We have taken the decision to find another $1 billion in savings around the use of external labour, consultants, contractors, labour hire. That builds on the $3 billion that we've already taken.
Well, knock me down with a feather, because that far right-wing publication, the Sydney Morning Herald, the Uggage and the Brisbane Times, this is where you're supposed to show the headline. It says, Labor vowed to crack down on consultants, but spending on consultants is going up. How it started versus how it's going. All right, before we get to our debate tonight, which is always great, between Senator Canavan, the Queensland perspective, the man who wants us to get rid of net zero, Nicholas Reesa, who has been talking net zero for years and years and would love us all to double down on climate targets. We get to that in a moment. We're keeping an eye on what's taking place in the United Kingdom right now with Donald Trump on a verge of a meeting with the Prime Minister of the UK. This meeting was supposed to happen by now. In fact, we're almost half an hour past when the meeting was supposed to start. Keir Starmer is already at the place where the meeting is due to be taking place on the western coast of Scotland. President, maybe sleeping in. Time zone difference. Who knows? Jet lag, or he's just got something to say on Truth Social. We'll all find out together. Well, again, far right-wing think tank, Sydney Morning Herald, repeats what I've said plenty of times, and despite the fact I've got the photo, I'm fully fluent in Team MAGA, I know the reality that in Australia, the majority of Australians aren't that flash when it comes to Donald Trump. In fact, new polling which came out from the Reserve people, it shows that, yeah, OK, the yellow line is the number of people who think that there is a poor outcome of the last United States election. Went from 40% to more than 65% of people who thought that things were bad. Now it's down to 53%. It's a majority, and ever so slightly. Only 18% of people, which is down from 29% of people when the election was held, think the result was a good one. So essentially in Australia, like a presidential preferential vote or a personal leadership vote, you've got negatives, 53%. Positive view, 18%. Rest of people go, whatever, who cares? What else is on TV? Well, again, a bit more in this polling here too, which tells us about just how Australia should interact with the United States principally and because of the Trump presidency. About 46% of people believe that we should become more independent from the United States. 56% of people who are Labor voters, remember, that's only a third. 34% of coalition voters, which again is less than a third, and none of the above, 45% say that that's a good. So a third. It's only the Labor voters that have the majority of people who say that we should become more independent from the United States. But, well, we'll all find out together. But again, also, as a person who likes Donald Trump, who understands how he won, who understands how he lost, and then understands how he won again, the South Park thing was hilarious. It was really funny. And one of the best ways that you can always have a crack at the powerful is to take the piss, is to laugh. And that's what they decided to do, and that's fine, no surprise. What I found equally funny was South Park, which is a pretty blue show, pretty MA, pretty R-rated at times, and watching the straight-laced people on the news in the United States where you cannot say a swear, how they described what was a pretty blue episode.
The White House is firing back at Comedy Central's South Park after the season premiere. The episode Wednesday included a scene showing President Trump lying in bed with Satan, who also had a previous relationship with Saddam Hussein on the show.
Had a previous relationship with Saddam Hussein. It's a cartoon. Previous relationship with. I love the way they do it. Also, the creators at San Diego Comic-Con, which has just finished, well, they had this to say after the outrage.
Did you anticipate the reaction today? Have you been following it? What do you make of it?
We're terribly sorry.